So I must admit, when they announced that there would be yet another Avatar live-action remake, I was pretty skeptical, given how badly it went last time. In fact, that movie was so disgustingly atrocious that they couldn't even pronounce Aang's name right.
My name is Aang, and I'm the Avatar.
You're not that guy, pal. Trust me. You're not that guy.
But then Netflix released a little show called One Piece last year and proved that they could stay faithful to source material and actually give fans what they want, unlike some people.
Hey, Bob. If you're in the audience.
So following One Piece, I was pretty optimistic for their rendition of Avatar: The Last Airbender, but then that optimism quickly faded from the moment I pressed play. And from the moment that logo fades into oblivion, so did any hope I had for this show. As it certainly wasn't Madam Web level atrocious, but it definitely wasn't anything to write home about either. And yes, there were a couple positives that I'll touch on later, but they were buried very deep under a field of negatives. From average CGI to weak performances, which I think was mostly due to the most cliched dialogue I had ever heard. Because my god, was the dialogue in this show bad. You know that dialogue where you genuinely feel bad for the actors saying it, and you're almost embarrassed for them? Yeah, that's what we're working with here. Because honestly, I don't feel like the actors were all that bad, but it's hard to gauge the level of their performances when they have to deliver lines like, "I don't know where this will all lead, I don't know if I have what it takes, but one thing I do know is I'm the Avatar, and this is just the beginning." I mean, seriously, Marlon Brando couldn't even save that line, so I don't want to attack the actors for something that clearly isn't their fault. And honestly, when it comes to a show like Avatar: The Last Airbender, turning that into live action really is the ultimate layup for success. As it's such a great story, all you need to do is just follow basic writing rules for dialogue, and you can't go wrong. And one of those basic rules is to show, not tell, but this Netflix series chooses to tell you everything and show you absolutely nothing. As they never let the setting or the situation dictate the emotion of the scene, as they have the characters literally saying their emotions to each other, which is honestly the biggest writing mistake you can possibly make, and definitely not something you'd expect on a Netflix level production. As they would literally say things like "I'm scared" or "I'm angry," or even worse, continue to say all of their intentions rather than show us through the characters' actions. Which is the only way you can really create a character arc where you give them certain intentions and place obstacles in their way, and it's through them overcoming those obstacles that they grow as characters, but you can't have them growing as characters by just saying their intentions and speaking their way through growth. You actually need to show it in their actions and their intentions. And that's what results in these characters not developing in the same way as the original show, or in the same seamless way, where it definitely feels a lot more forced and feels as if they haven't earned their development, and feels as if the growth is just fake and fabricated, and leads to the overall cliche vibe of this series. But moving on from the writing, another massive issue with this show is the tone or lack thereof. As it seems a little confused in what it wants to be, and I think that's because they had to ask themselves whether they wanted to target children or the young adults that grew up with the original show, and rather than answer that question with just trying to find a middle ground and telling the best story possible, what they ended up doing was writing some scenes that seemed incredibly youth-orientated, and others that seemed a lot more adult-directed. Which leads us to question the overall vibe of this show and who they're really making it for.
Who you talking to?
Because I think due to the fact that fans can get very angry over a remake or a reboot, they were so scared to anger anyone that they ended up trying to play it way too safe, when all they really needed to do was just honor the source material and write dialogue that would help develop the characters. There was no need to play down or play up in age. All they had to do was let the story speak for itself, which is why people of any age can watch the original, because it's It's not trying to play to a specific audience. It's not trying to play up or down. All it's doing is telling the best story possible, and whatever tone or vibe suits that story is what they went for, and that's why anyone from the age of 6 years old to 90 years old would be able to enjoy that original show. And this lack of clear tone leads to the show feeling like an absolute grind to get through, and each episode feels so incredibly long due to the fact that you were never really transported into the world and taken on the journey with them, which is once again something the original show did so well. Which is a real shame given the fact that the costume and set design team did such a great job of actually creating the world, but the writers couldn't take us there to allow us to enjoy it. Because that was definitely one positive with this show, as the sets and costumes I thought looked terrific. They felt clean and crisp yet still lived in, which is honestly a really hard thing to do, and when turning a cartoon into live action, it can be a very difficult task to actually create the sets and create the costumes that both enhance the original show but also stay true to it. And then, of course, the second positive is the overall story, because they didn't deviate too much from that original plot, but you're better off just watching the original, given that that's a positive, because the original tells that story better, and it really is just the same story. Which leads to my final talking point here, which is just what's the point of these live-action remakes? Because yes, One Piece succeeded, and it was a massive hit, and the fans of the original source material also liked the One Piece live action, but honestly, if they liked that original story, what was the point of even making it live action in the first place? Yes, I understand there's a market for these live action remakes, but honestly, if the story's already been told once, I just don't see a point in trying to tell it again, because you can be a success like One Piece, but you can also be a failure like countless other live action remakes, and like this Avatar Last Airbender series is. Because it seems like the two options you have when making something live action is either honoring the source material and being on the same level, or being worse, as you're hardly ever going to improve upon the original story, you're hardly ever going to create something that's viewed as better, most likely it's going to be viewed as worse or just the same. So once again, I have to ask the question, what is the damn point? Because when you do fail in retelling a story, you only tarnish its legacy, and you hurt what that story could be to a younger generation that hasn't seen it yet, and it saddens me to think that maybe some young kids of today would grow up watching this live-action Avatar rather than the original show. But once again, it's probably just another ploy to round out the streaming service, another way to make a quick buck, and another way to try and keep up with the insane demand for content these days, but honestly, I just didn't see a point in this show ever being made. But what are your thoughts on Avatar The Last Airbender? What are your thoughts on this video? Let me know down below in the comments. If you liked the video, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you all on my next video.